Good everyone, Kajima Tosh Sheev, and welcome back to episode number 49 of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. How are you all getting on? How have the last few weeks been for you all? I've had a long series of guest episodes and last minute recordings on here, and I've been unable to check in on your lovely chocolate covered wee faces. So if anyone's achieved anything, both on or off the flute in recent times, or has achieved a personal goal, or has just got any exciting news they want to share with me, please fire me a message. I consider your successes my successes too. We're one big, lovely, happy family here. Also, I should say, I have went on quite an aggressive marketing campaign recently for this podcast. So, if you are brand new to the Inline G Flute podcast, first of all, thank you very much for stopping by. It is lovely to have you here. Maybe consider going back and checking out one of the earlier episodes, especially if you are brand new to classical music, in which case I would go back to episode number 25. That is a beginner's guide to classical music, in brackets, just enough to get you laid. It is a great jumping off point for this podcast, and I'm very proud of it as a piece of art, because I think a few people got laid with it. So go back there, check it out. Today might be a little bit too far in the deep end to jump off, but maybe not. Stick around, see how you get on. So why am I going aggressive on the marketing? Because, dear listener, the countdown is on for the US of A. I actually got attacked recently because I referred to it as America. Apparently you're not meant to do that. Trust me, I have a lot of words for that place. Consider America mercy. But anyway, I have got a huge road trip planned across the free world. Is that what you call it? Is that what Americans call it? Free my hole. But anyway, I've got a trip planned across America, and I will be exploring every single fast food. I want to eat a Baconator. I want to know what that is. I want to get a Raising Cane's, a Jack in the Box, an In-N-Out burger. I've planned them all out, and I'm going to do it all while sucking on a lovely Bud Light Lime. Although I was heartbroken to hear recently, you can't drink in the car in America. Even in the passenger seat, you can't drink. Although, it's one of those things, isn't it? You can't do it, but yeah. I know, Americans love drink driving, man. They love it. They're mad for, these are mad for drink driving, so I'm going to embrace the local culture when in Rome, huh? But, I'm not actually going to drink drive, right? Grow the fuck up. The road trip ends at the NFA convention in San Antonio. Now, what's the NFA convention? For those unfamiliar, that is the National Flute Association. Not to be confused with the NRA, the National Rifle Association, or the IRA. The National Flute Association. So basically, you have to remember, in America, if you can think of it, there is an association that holds a convention once a year in some shitty Holiday Inn in some fucking piss hole in the arse of nowhere in America. That's not the case here. San Antonio is a very nice town, apparently. But anyway, I'll be going to the convention. I'm hoping to catch a few of your lovely faces there. I've actually already found the nearest Irish pub to the convention. So if anyone finds themselves at a loose end during some of the shit bits of the convention, the shite bits of the convention, the bits you really don't want to go to, things like the flute choir. If you want to go to that, if you don't want to go to that and you want to come and join me for a lovely pint in 40-degree heat, 40 degrees Celsius, whatever, I don't know what that is in your fairy tale mumbo jumbo gobbledygook numbers in America, but 40-degree heat, you can come over with me for a lovely pint of Guinness, and we'll just wait this out and let it blow over. Let me see one of the flute choir. Also, on the flute choir, I heard recently, multiple people have told me, you have to pay to play in the flute choir. Like, you have to pay your actual hard-earned, green as fuck American dollars. You have to give them over to someone else's hand and place it there, so you can play in a flute choir. I'd rather shite in my hands and clap. That's a fucking disgrace. You have lost the running yourselves in America. You lost your fucking minds playing a flute choir. But anyway, here, the countdown's on. It's a couple of weeks away. So my aim before then is to promote this podcast as much as fuck. So when I go to America, I can follow in the footsteps of all those great Irish heroes who have broken America before me. People like Oscar Wilde, Samuel Beckett, Cillian Murphy, Liam Neeson, and the wee shite one from One Direction. Today's episode, therefore, is back to business. I'm sucking on a bottle of something delicious, and I'm going to explain some very complex musical theory concepts, all as a result of something that happened on, drumroll please, fucking Facebook. Facebook, man, I know, I should get off that place, especially that fucking group. We all know which one I'm talking about. But I was on it. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I got sucked into this argument, and it wound me up so much now that I've realised something, actually. There's an epidemic. Or a pandemic. I don't know which one's which. I should have researched that, but I can't be fucked, alright? I've got bigger fish to fry. There's an epidemic out there Because I was arguing with this person, spent way too much of a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock sitting on Facebook arguing with someone that A sharp, for example, A sharp and B flat are not the same note. They have actual different pitches and different frequencies. They are not the same note depending on the context. And also, pianos and electric tuners are not in tune. And this person, who actually claimed to be a music theory teacher, argued tooth and nail against me. The fucking idiot. I also teach music theory, 100% pass rate with the ABRSM exams, thank you very much. And so, I am here to explain everything, the lot. So as long as I don't get too drunk in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to explain the lot. Using physics, mathematics, history, we're going to explain the origins of intonation, the differences, the important differences between just intonation and equal temperament, and finally, we are going to explain why pianos are not in tune and why A sharp and B flat are not the same note. So here we fucking go. Strap yourselves in. The very first question, what are notes? What is a note? It's not as simple an idea as you think. It is quite complicated. It's bloody complicated. Who's that? Who's my impression of? It's bloody complicated. Notes. They're complicated. The devil's in the details. I really hope you get that reference. A note, right? Okay, what is a note? A note is a sound, and the note that differentiates it from other notes, it is the frequency at which it vibrates, or that sound vibrates. It's a physical thing. Sound has vibrations. How many times per second that vibrates gives us that note, and it has a frequency. So different speeds of vibration have different frequencies. For example, if we get a sound that vibrates at 440 hertz or 440 times per second, we now call that note A. Usually. Not all the time. I'll get to that later. But if we go all the way back to a time even before Guinness existed, there was a fella called Pythagoras. Do you guys study Pythagoras as well? You know, Pythagoras with his fucking triangles and his theories and all that? That has never came in handy. That has never been useful for me as an adult to know about Pythagoras' fucking triangles, but I do remember when I was learning it at school in mathematics, listen to me, maths. My teacher at the time was called Miss Redding, and after Miss Redding stopped teaching, she became a model, did a bit of modelling on the side, so therefore, you can imagine maths was a class 14-year-old me could not fucking wait for. I actually saw her drunk once in a nightclub when I was 18, and it shattered my worldview. Miss Redding, if you're listening, call me. But anyway, Pythagoras, not just maths and sexy teachers, he did music too. And this wee Greek minx realised, one of his big realizations was, if you take a note or a frequency and you double it, the second note will blend beautifully with the first. They're in perfect harmony. The waves actually match up and it is very pleasurable to the ear. He found that it was the purest harmony that existed. And in fact, it's so pure, we often have difficulty telling the difference between the two notes, distinguishing them from each other. Now, these two notes nowadays are now referred to as being an octave apart. So, for example, if you had a C as the bottom note and you doubled its frequency, the new note would be C as well. We even give them the same fucking name. So, for example, this isn't true, but if C was 100 hertz or vibrated at 100 times a second, the next C would be 200. Double. Easy peasy. Now, if I play you C beside C, I hope this comes through clearly, you'll hear beautiful, clear sound. So there's your first C. And we add the second. Beautiful. A beautiful sound. Very clear and perfect intonation. Now, Pythagoras also worked out which frequencies we hear within a certain note. Now, I know that sounds like hocus pocus witchcraft, but listen, bear with me here, okay? Every note has its own frequency, that is true. But each note also has a series of notes above it that are blended in to create that individual note. For example, if you want to find this out, go to a piano. Go open up a piano, put your finger on one of the keys, stick your ear inside, and see how many other notes you can hear vibrating along with that single note. You'll hear a couple. There's a mixture. That is because within that frequency that you've played the note at, the sound waves interact and clash with other frequencies. Now, that's also why if you sing at a certain interval or a certain note, you will be able to smash glass, for example. That is 100% true. That happens. Now, this natural progression of notes that we hear within one note, we have now given the name the harmonic series. Now, flute players, you'll be familiar with the harmonic series. If you're not, you're a fucking disgrace. The harmonic series can be found very easily on the flute. is you've all practiced harmonics, the exercise harmonics. You've all done it. And if you haven't, oh, mummy, you're in trouble. You should be fucking getting on that. But to play harmonics, for example, what we do is we play one of our lower notes, usually a C, and we overblow them using the same fingering as the bottom note, and you'll get different notes. It's usually an exercise in air control, airstream, diaphragm, lip movement, etc., etc. But the series of notes that comes out, depending on your bottom one, is the harmonic series. Now, for us as a flute player, we have to remember our instrument starts at middle C on the piano. So the bang middle C on the piano is our lowest note. So the harmonic series is already a little bit ahead because it starts down at the lower notes, but it gets more tightly compacted as it goes up. So we're starting at middle C. If you play a middle C, so your bottom C on the flute, and you overblow it, what's your next note going to be? It's going to be another C. That's the first note in the harmonic series, an octave. What Pythagoras found out as well, the most pure one. The next interval will be a perfect fifth, and you'll find that out because if you blow that over on the flute, you'll get your perfect fifth above that C, which will be a G. Then the next interval is a perfect fourth. Again, if you blow over your G, you'll get another C, which is a fourth above G. Then after that, we have, I think it's a major third. So if you're playing a C, you'll get an E, a high E. And then there's a couple of other things in there in the actual harmonic series, but what you'll hear on the flute is, I think it's a minor third or major second. I'm not sure which one it gets to at that point. But anyway, that will follow the harmonic series. I should have tried this out on my flute, but I can't be fucked. But that's a harmonic series. So anyway, let's go back. We've got our two notes that Pythagoras found out are lovely. The first two notes of the harmonic series, the most pure, beautiful harmony you can get between two notes. They're loved up and they're perfectly harmonious. And the relationship is, if you have any note, you double it, happy fucking days, you've got its partner for life. Great. Problem though, you can't write much of a tune with two notes. It's not going to sound great. So Pythagoras then went to the next interval in the harmonic series, the perfect fifth, which was also a beautiful harmonic sound. And he worked out to find that ratio above your original note, you go 2/3 above. So you take 2/3 of whatever your frequency was originally, you add it on to your note, and you've got your second most beautiful interval. Now, we now know this is a fifth. The reason we call it a fifth, ignore all that. We'll get to that later. But Pythagoras worked out the next note in the harmonic series, which is also very pleasurable to hear, was this one. So we start to C, and we put 2/3 above it, we will get beautiful. Now that is a perfect fifth. I actually did with equal temperament. Anyway, we'll continue. Ignore I said that. So we've got our perfect fifth. So he worked out that was our next most pleasurable one. So, and that sits in between our original lovers. We'll call them lovers for now. That's a good way to measure it, actually. So in between our original lovers, we have an extra note now because it's a fifth above our first lover. Beautiful. Now we have got a 3-note scale. Still not great. Not going to be writing many tunes with 3 notes. Like the 3 notes are just... That's the 3 notes. So you're not going to be writing much music out of that. But Pythagoras then thought, right, we've got our 2 perfect notes. I've got one in the middle. Excuse me. And I now want to work out how many notes I can get in between those two. Because there is technically an unlimited amount. If I go from C to C, that interval, technically between that, there is an unlimited amount of notes. Because you could just go like, da. I think that was an octave. But anyway, you see what I mean? There's an unlimited number of sounds there. So how many are we going to divide it into? How are we going to divide it up? Are we going to put a couple of notes? Are we going to put loads of notes? Are we going to use 200, 50, 10? How do we do that? Pythagoras eventually decided on 12. It's a system that we still use today. Why 12? Well, that is a very good question. Well, it's easy. First of all, he's found his fifth in between. We've got a 3-note scale. Now, using this formula of sticking with fifths, it continues going up in that ratio. So 2/3 added on. So we go C to G, our first 2. From that second note, we go up another fifth, or the same interval, and we find another note. Now we've got a 4-note scale. The problem is our new note is a little bit too high. It's beyond our original ratio of our 2 lovers. It's just past the second lover. But Pythagoras, being the clever wee fucker he was, realized the most perfect interval is double. The opposite of that is half. So anytime that he finds a note that is too high outside our original 2 lovers, he cuts that in half and puts it in the scale. So C to G is our interval of the fifth, G to D. The D sits outside the 2 C's, we bring it down, and now it's within. Now we've got a 4-note scale. And he continues and continues until we end up at the frequency of our second lover. And within that, you have got 12 notes. 12 lovely, perfect, beautiful notes. Music. Beautiful. The podcast is over. Everyone's happy. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much for listening. Not fucking quite, baby. This is the perfect time for a quick Patreon ad read. The Inline G podcast is free and always will be free. That is a guarantee. However, if you want to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute podcast. It costs €5 or dollars or pounds per month, and with that, you are legitimately keeping this podcast alive. You get 4 episodes a month of this podcast, come rain nor fucking shine. A $5 a month, that is the price of a pint. It's actually a little bit less than a pint these days. My thinking was, if you saw me in a pub and you thought, fuck, I love Gareth's podcast, it's brilliant, Inline G's great, I'll buy him a beer, and you would do that once a month, do it virtually. That's how I decided on my price. I do everything around here, literally everything on my own, from marketing, graphic design, research, scripts, audio production, video production, ad fucking infinitum. If you become a patron of this podcast, it helps generate a regular income for the podcast, meaning I can turn down other work, and it makes it a genuine job. It's an artistic creation, and you're supporting an artist creating the greatest piece of art I've ever created in my life. I love this podcast with all my heart. This is my baby, and I am fucking in love with it and the community we have made around it. It also helps fund me to go and travel to meet the best flute players in the world and get them on the podcast. Now, as a thank you, you will get your chance to answer or to put your questions to these guys, and you'll get episodes usually a little bit earlier than everyone else. But generally, everyone gets the same podcast. I don't believe that other people should get extra content for signing up. If you can't afford it, you still get the same amount. So if you can afford it, please go and sign up over there. It's hugely appreciated. And to the patrons that are still there, or the new ones, thank you so much. I do actually have something very special planned for you guys next week, so stay in tune. But if you can't afford it, it's grand. You can keep listening for free. Now remember, also, if you do sign up, you can unsubscribe at any time. There's no hidden fees or weird shit like that. You just jump out, easy as you like signing up to an Apple subscription. It's easy. Thank you very much. Now, back to this big gyros of a man. Gyros? Gyros? How do you pronounce that in English? Also, was that a hate crime to call him a gyros because he's Greek? Fucking gyros is delicious. Now, if we work out the exact frequencies, you can go check this. If we work out the exact frequencies of the notes Pythagoras had in his series of fifths, which we will now call the circle of fifths, with his 12 notes, we'll look at the exact frequencies. It should end up back at the end, going up in 2/3, as he's worked out with his ratio. It should end up back at our second lover, our second C, happy days. And that second note should be double the first one of our 2 lovers, and should all be contained within that. And it almost is. When Pythagoras does his series of fifths, the note that ends up being the last one is very, very, very close to being the first one. But ratios, as we know, are not perfect. They're tricky wee fuckers. The main problem being 2/3 is a ratio. If you take, I don't know, what number, 100, and you make 2/3 of it, what do you get? 66.666 recurring. It is not an even number, and that's where things get tricky. So in the end, the note is close, but no dice. Now, it's close enough, and often close enough seems grand, but in music it will create some problems. If you're playing a nice simple chord, for example, with Pythagoras' intonation and his notes that have laid out, a nice simple chord will sound beautiful and perfect and wonderful, just like the harmonic series and the natural physical shape of the airwaves or sound waves want us to be. It's wonderful. The minute you try to use more complicated scales or chords or change the other keys, things go a bit wonky, and they can get wonky as fuck. Now that is again because of these decimal points that just start adding up when we're using ratios. It becomes more complicated, and small differences of close enough suddenly do become quite far off on certain notes. So how are we going to work out a solution to this? Thank God there was a wee Flemish fellow called Simon Steven, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, in the 1500s. He was in Bruges, which is now current day Belgium. I haven't a fucking clue what it was back then. I don't know. I don't care either. He didn't speak French. He spoke Flemish, and I think he spoke Dutch as well, aka fucking mumbo jumbo gobbledygook talk. But he worked out that that Pythagoras was on to something with having 12 notes in between the two perfect intervals of an octave. Not everyone had 12 notes, by the way, and not everyone still has 12 notes. In certain Southeastern Asian cultures and Far East cultures, they use different amounts of tones in their scales, but Western music will use 12. And Mr. Steven agrees that 12 notes seems about right. It's as close a number as we're going to get to true harmony. Pythagoras was as close as we're going to get. So he's going to accept the number 12. But what he's going to do is he's going to take our first two notes, and then every note in between, the 12 notes in between, is just going to divide them up evenly. So he's going to work out the interval divided by 12, the space between the two notes divided by 12, and each note will be evenly spaced apart from another one. This now becomes known as equal or even temperament. Now this is specifically, or most importantly, for instruments who cannot change their pitch. So they could play in all keys, and when you do it in even temperament, there are certain notes that are slightly out of tune, but they're all evenly out of tune across different keys, and just slightly. More so than others. Nowadays, pianos are still tuned to this, and your electric tuner or your apps on your phone, they're tuned to equal or even temperament. You can find tuners with just intonation. If you set the bass note as Pythagoras did, you can find just intonation with the ratios. But all of our tuning nowadays on tuners is done to equal temperament, and pianos are tuned because pianos can change their tuning as they go along. Unlike other instruments where we can adapt and make micro adjustments, piano can't. Now, it's been so long that we've had equal temperament, our ears have become very comfortable and very used to these imperfections, so much so that we don't really recognize them as being out of tune. But I do want to see how far off are these equal notes, this equal temperament, to the original true intervals? How different are they in terms of actual pitch, in terms of the actual frequency of the notes? Because they are a little bit. So some intervals are fine. Octaves, for example, if you play two of the same note in the piano, they are perfectly in tune, more or less. Like they're so in tune that you cannot hear the difference. Nobody can. They're almost wonderful. Fourths and fifths, which we now call perfect fourths and perfect fifths, they are very, very close. You can hear a difference, which I'm going to let you have later, but it's so close that most often we wouldn't hear it. But there are other notes that are a good bit out. And here I hear this bollocks all the time of, oh, but the human ear can't hear the difference in that. It's only, 15 cents or whatever. You fucking can. You fucking can hear the difference. And if you can't hear it when I'm about to play it, you're talking out your fucking hole. You can definitely hear it. So I'm going to demonstrate it right now. But I'm not going to use notes. I'm going to use computer generated frequency. So they are bang on the actual frequency. They're absolutely perfect. So for all these intervals we're going to be making, because Pythagoras' theorem relies on a bass note to then have the appropriate intervals and ratios attached, our bass note is going to be C for everything we do here. So let's test. If we have C to G using equal temperament, so Mr. Steven's 12 divided ones, the way pianos are tuned now, this is C to G. Lovely. And if we use Pythagoras' C to G, sounds the same. It's the same. So it's very, very, very close there, which proves my point. Fifths are very, very, very close. Now, if I play the two Gs, so you can hear how similar they are. They sound very similar, but what you can hear is you can hear a little bit of, you can hear like a little bit of a bend. That is where they're so close in terms of pitch. Actually, I'll see exactly how close they are, but 196 hertz and 196.22 hertz. They're so close. We're talking about one wave, if even here, that's off. So that's why you get that slight in between. It's that one single wave difference going between the two notes. So you'll hear it. If you really listen carefully, you might hear this. I might have to put the microphone down here. Did you hear that wee wave in there? That doesn't come very often. It comes every few seconds. But listen, it's so close to being in tune that we'll not worry about it. Okay. Now, the next interval, I don't know, a fourth. So let's tie it on even temperament or equal temperament. And that's equal temperament. There is a bit of a buzz there. Now, by the way, the buzz, that is what we're listening for. The buzz is when we're out of tune. That's why when people play out of tune, it's very grating to the ears. It's where the frequencies of the sound waves clash with each other and they create a buzz. And it's quite unpleasant to the ear. Nowadays, we're quite used to it because our music can be quite dissonant and we can use weird intervals and we got used to them, but back in the day people weren't. For example, the tritone is an interval. It's an augmented fourth, so if I do this, that's the tritone interval. That was banned in most music for a long time because it was said it was called the Diablos de Musica, which is the devil of the music. The devil's in the details. It sounds like the gulags. It's God's way of punishing us for the sin of existing. Man, that's a fucking good impression. But anyway, sorry. That's what we're listening for. If you hear the buzz, it means the notes are right. So anyway, we got our perfect fourth. That would sound great. And let's do it with just intonation, like Pythagoras' original intonation. C. Again, very similar. If I play the two Fs, so you can hear how power apart they are. Yeah, you get that wave. Okay, so again, fourths and fifths are pretty close to the piano. But here's where it's going to get fucking tasty. If I play this interval, so that is a C to quick bit of music theory here. That's on equal temperament. Now if I do that on Pythagoras' intonation, maybe you heard the difference here, but if I play those two A's together, the second notes, so that is a perfect sixth. Do you fucking hear that? Do you guys fucking hear the waves in that? The woo 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 woo. That tells you how fucking out of tune the piano is. That is fucking mad. Like, let me play that again. That's out of tune as shit. You can hear that. That is out of tune. They're well apart. Like, they're fucking out there. A couple of other intervals are quite out there as well. For example, the major seventh, the B's. If I just play the B's directly for you. So this is the B. If it was worked out on equal temperament. And then I'm going to add the just intonation. Do you hear? I can even see my fucking thing lighting up. Do you hear the waves in that? Tell you how far apart they are. Like, even if I play them separately, I think you can hear it. Yeah, like, that's different, man. That's I'll tell you how fucking different it is in a minute. They're out of tune. Okay, so to give you an idea, this is all measured in cents. So the difference I'm about to tell you is cents, like the American change. Now, a cent is a 1/100th of a semitone. So a semitone is the two nearest notes in the piano, where you obviously hear a difference. Now, the A, if we were running in C being the bass note, the exercise we just did, the A is 15 cents flat to the true natural intonation Pythagoras gave using ratios, as opposed to the compromise system we have of equal temperament. 15 cents, that is nearly a fifth of a tone flat. That is noticeable. That is noticeable as shit. Like, that's a big thing. The B is 11 cents flat. The G, for example, the perfect fifth, is 1 cent sharp. That's why it's so difficult to hear. That's why you only get your one fucking wave in it. And the F is 1 flat. The E is 13 cents flat. So these are big fucking differences, man. They are properly different. Now, equal temperament is so important to say this. This is for pianos, or instruments that cannot change their tuning. They can't adjust it in any kind of way. You can't make a piano sharper or flatter on the go. You have to retune the whole fucking thing. But all orchestral instruments, the flute included, can make micro adjustments to their intonation or their tuning on the go. You can make your notes slightly sharper, slightly flatter. On the flute, we can do it a fucking semitone. We all know this. We can be sharp or flat just by moving our heads up and down or changing the airstream. Violins, string instruments, they can do the same thing. We can all adjust it. We can be slightly out. So, if you're a flute player and you're playing with the piano, you're going to do a piano concert or with a piano, if you tune according to your tuner, it's perfect. Your tuner's on equal temperament, your piano's on equal temperament, it'll match. It'll be fucking lovely. If you're in an orchestra and you're trying to get a gorgeous, perfectly colored chord that gets in your ear like sucking on a Bud Light lime. You need to use just intonation. This is also why, fun fact, this is why student orchestras, even high-level student orchestras that are technically quite gifted, they always sound a little bit out of tune because they've all practiced with tuners. They haven't developed the ear yet for just intonation. It's a very fine art to get it. Pro orchestras, at that level, that's where this all starts to change quite a bit. Now, am I saying that top musicians will go and measure out their intervals to 13 cents to make sure they raise it to get it exactly right and practice it like that? No, they don't do that because it would change depending on what the bottom note is, where you are relative to a note. It's too much work. Nobody can do that. Now, but they can still do it to get the true intonation. They do it by very, very finely listening to their chord and analysing their intonation until they find that sweet spot. And you just know it when you hear it. When you get the true colour of a chord, it just hits you. Now, I'm going to give you a few tips to get started doing that. Firstly, you need to know what chord you're playing and what note you're playing in. So if you're a flute player playing in an orchestra and you want to know, am I getting just intonation here? You need to know what chord it is. Go and get the score and figure it out. Do a bit of musical analysis. If, for example, the orchestra is playing a C major chord and you're playing a C as well, you're going to be on the top. That's easy. You're in same thing as equal temperament. The octave is exactly the same as it would be on the tuner. Happy days. That's easy. If you're playing the E, which is the major third, we know that it's 13 cents flat on a tuner. And so you're going to have to raise the pitch of a major third by 13 cents to get it truly in tune. On these digital tuners, for example, you have like sort of the green zone when it's right, and then the orange zone when it's a little bit wonky, and then the red zone when it's out of tune. On that note, for example, you would want to be just on the slightly too sharp side in the little orange area. Just on that. That would be genuinely in tune if you're not playing with an instrument that is equally tempered. So if you're doing chamber music, if you're playing with instruments that can change your intonation, that's the true one. And that is the elite level of music making. This is so important. It's what elite players, you hear them talk about colour all the time and colouring a chord. That's what it is. The differences are so fucking fine. And our ear is so used to even temperament that we don't hear even temperament as wrong. We just merely hear it as a colour. Or we'll hear it as uncoloured or a little bit bland or a little bit boring. Now, it does seem pedantic to go into this level of work. And I know a lot of people have accused me, especially on Facebook, of being pedantic for this. But the search of true perfection with intonation, that's what separates the men from the boys here, lads. That's what gives you that extra level of elite level music making. It's what gives these incredible orchestras the wow factor when they play a chord live. And the frequencies just match up fucking perfectly. And it just whacks your ears. It's like someone just coming up and whispering into your ear, do you want to go for a wee pint? You hear that and your fucking neck hair stand up. A perfectly in tune chord will give you that effect. Basically, there'll be no bumps, there'll be no clashes with the sound waves at all. Not even that one wee clash that we got with the fifths earlier. It will go straight in. Now, while we're on the topic of frequencies, by the way, I said earlier, orchestras tune to an A, and the A is 440. Now, why is it 440? This isn't standard. People need to fucking learn this as well. I think this is an American thing as well, and the Brits, because they're too slightly arrogant and blind countries when it comes to the rest of the world. Because the rest of the world, we have different things, but the Brits and the Americans, you know what they're fucking like. I can already hear the comments I'm going to get in as well on the jersey I'm wearing this week. This is a Palestino jersey. It's a Chilean football team that were founded by Palestinian immigrants a long time ago. I've been wearing this jersey because at this point it should be very obvious I'm incredibly pro-Palestine and I'm not hiding it anymore. But we're talking about the Brits. Fuck me. The only problem I've had with wearing this jersey with fucking English people, sorry. Yeah. To be fair, we mean English, because if you're Scottish, or you're Irish, or you're Welsh, you'll not call yourself British. You call yourself Scottish, Irish, or Welsh. But anyway, the only issue I've had has been with those people, and you get that condescending remark. Do you know what I saw? Actually, I'll give you the exact example of it. I was on TikTok the other day, and there's these two guys that do interviews. I didn't get their names. They're two British guys. They're like proper gammons, like fucking red-faced big lads. One of them's bald as fuck, and the other one's got like loads of hair and a big mustache. It kind of looks like a before and after photo of someone's holiday to Turkey. But they sit there and they debate like young liberals on the internet and then call them idiots. They're fucking idiots themselves. Anyway, they were doing this whole argument against the guard because the guard was saying what Israel is doing in Palestine at the minute is genocide. And the UN have actually proved, and they've released a report saying 3 out of the 5 necessary steps to be convicted of genocide is already happening in Palestine. 3 out of 5 is enough to be counted as genocide. Anyway, and then the guy was like, it's not genocide, it's just war. That means, in your opinion, all wars would be genocide. Do you think every war is genocide? And he started listening through different wars. And then he had the fucking cheek to say, even us, do you think that what the British did in Ireland, for example, is genocide? And I was sitting there going, yeah, it fucking was. That's what we call it in Ireland. You guys call it a potato famine. We don't use the word famine. Fucking genocide. You fucking idiots, man. Ugh. So, although if you are English and you're pro-Palestine, welcome in. Welcome to the group here. The election's coming up as well. If the Brits don't get rid of the fucking Tories, man, I swear to God, they burn that place to the ground. Anyway, how did I get on to all that? Oh yeah, intonation. So 440 is not standard. Okay, there's actually quite a good, interesting bit of history around this. Originally, we tuned much, much higher. Orchestras tuned to a different A, much, much, much higher. But it came down, as usual, because of those divas of the classical music world, singers. God help their wee voices when they have to sing a fucking semitone higher than usual. So anyway, France actually, in 1859, made a national law saying all ensembles and orchestras had to tune A to 435, not 440 as we standard now. This actually is still known today as French tuning or continental tuning. You'll get that in period orchestras, they'll refer to it as that. The Brits, however, they had Philharmonic tuning, they called it, which is 452. A equals 452 for a very long time. Like the 1800s, 1900s, they had 452. They actually had quite a few cancelled concerts as well because singers didn't want to go there because it was so high. So they started to bring it down a little bit, but it wasn't really standardized. Now, it did get standardized in 1939 by a committee, an international committee, who brought it to 440 finally. Originally, they actually wanted 439, but a lot of complaints came in because 439 is a prime number, so it's really difficult to replicate in lab scenarios or research situations, so they moved it up to 440. Now, the general tendency of the last 100 years is to have orchestras rise. They've brought their pitch up bit by bit. 440 is still there in the USA and Berlin. There are some top American orchestras that are exceptions to this. For example, the Boston Symphony Orchestra is still tuned to 442. It's why they do sound a wee bit sharp to most ears, but it gives them, in my opinion, that lovely sparkling edge to their sound. In Germany, we play to 443 quite a lot. Even 445, to be honest, depending on the orchestra, but it's quite often 443 here. For a fun game, well, I don't know if fun's the right word, but for a game, go and tune yourself. So get your flute out, tune a top E flat, and put it perfectly to your tuner on A equals 440, and then go and get the recording of the Eroica Symphony, which is Beethoven's Third Symphony by Herbert von Karajan conducting the Berlin Philharmonic, and play along with the first note. The first note's a big E flat major chord. Play along with the first note and see how fucking flat you are. Because back then, von Karajan tuned his orchestras so fucking high, it is honestly like a quarter of a tone. It's fucking wild. Go do that and tell me how you get on. But anyway, lads, that's it. That's the end of the podcast. What a fucking week it's been now. Now you know how to effectively argue with people on the internet. All because of Inline G. And while I'm at it, you should go and recommend Inline G to people. Go tell people. You quote me as a source in your internet arguments. And if you're still listening here, please go and subscribe to the podcast. Wherever you're listening, on Spotify, on Apple Music, on YouTube, wherever you're at, subscribe. If you've subscribed already, go to one of those other places and subscribe too. The numbers are hard to get up in this podcast. It's a very niche podcast. It's got a small following, but it's got a strong one. And these tiny little things, which don't cost you a fucking penny, really make a difference. Leave a comment if you're listening to this. Especially, see if you're on Spotify, leave a 5-star review, please. Do everything you can, tell your mates about it, get it out there, and then come along for the ride as we take it all on. I want to see how big this podcast can get before America, and then watch me ruin the whole fucking thing by getting drunk and doing a political episode on the American elections. But anyway, thank you all so much for listening, tuning in. This has been a fucking blast. I love this kind of nerdy shit, man. This is so much fun. I love going down these rabbit holes. But I will see you all again next week for episode 50. I don't think I've got my special guest. It's in the works, but it's not caught on. So I'm still taking ideas for episode 50. I put it out on my Instagram today. got fuck all of you so far. So if you got an idea for episode 50, let me know. But anyway, thank you very much, guys. Sláinte, Free Palestine, up the dubs, and I'll see you all again next week. Mwah.